In 1941, Sir Geoffrey de Havilland began process on the idea of a more efficient build for planes for the war. He suggested using plywood for the main build of the plane. The government swiftly rejected this idea until Sir Geoffrey went ahead with his design regardless and built the first prototype of the Mosquito. There was a family tree size of different variants of the Mosquito. The most recognised was the bomber itself, but one of the key Mosquitoes was in fact the fighter variant, which was used in low-level missions due to its speed and how versatile the plane was for its time. The Mosquito was known for its incredible speed. It used a Merlin engine, as used by the Rolls-Royce, and could reach speeds of 300 to 400 miles an hour, the exact same speed and engine of the Spitfire. The Miraculous Wood Wonder is an unsung hero of the RAF. Being overshadowed by the Spitfire and the Lancaster bomber, this plane truly changed the way we engineer planes today. The design of the plywood was then changed to a metal form using a honeycomb section rather than plywood. Alistair Hodgson, the de Havilland Museum creator, will give us a brief look at the original prototype of the Mosquito.
The Second World War took place nearly 80 years ago now, and a lot of the aircraft that fought in the war are very few and far between, especially the first prototype aircraft from the war, the first example of any particular aircraft built. These are very rare indeed now. There are only 3 World War II first prototype aircraft left in the United Kingdom, and we have one of them here. It's the de Havilland Mosquito.
The plane was supposed to be destroyed, but it was only dismantled and hidden. It was later reassembled and used as a mantelpiece for the de Havilland Museum. It was built during the war as Hatfield was a large and potential target for Axis bombers. Now a member of the family tree, the FB-6 Mosquito.
This is called an FB-6 Mosquito, FB for fighter bomber, Mark 6, so it's a combination of a fighter and a bomber. You can see from the front it's got 4 machine guns in the nose and it's got 4 cannon underneath. Cannon being larger guns, they're larger types of machine gun, 20mm cannon, quite powerful, quite a high rate of fire, very destructive. And the bomber element of the aircraft was that in the back of the bomb bay you can still carry a couple of 500-pound bombs, and you can carry a couple of smaller 250-pound bombs underneath each wing too. So it's a very potent weapon. It wasn't, Mosquitoes originally of course designed to fly fast and high. This Mosquito was designed basically to fly fast and low. You weren't going up to 20-30,000 feet in an FB-6 generally. You were flying right down on the deck, and some of its most famous missions that it flew were flown at very, very low level, attacking ground targets in cities, in towns, attacking troops on the ground and things like that. So a very, very potent aircraft indeed.
The cockpit was a 2-man area for a pilot and a navigator. The navigator also spotted targets and performed reconnaissance, as well as pulling the latch for the bomb bay doors. But what about the engines on both sides of the wings, and the wooden design of the fuel tank?
We have a Merlin engine, a complete one, sections to show just the sheer physical size of the thing really. There's 6 cylinders on each bank, 2 banks of 6 cylinders, so it's a V12 engine. The engine's arranged in a V arrangement like that. Standard car engine these days, of course, something like between 1 and 2 litres maybe. This is 27 litres, so it's a very big, very powerful engine. 2 of these in the Mosquito, basically the same engine as would power the Spitfire or the Hurricane or the Lancaster bomber as well, Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. Over here we have an interesting example of wooden engineering, plywood engineering. This is a fuel tank. It was what was known as a slipper tank because it would go underneath the wing of a Mosquito. When it's round the other way, this is upside down, but it was the other way, it looked somewhat like a shoe or a slipper, full of fuel with a rubber bladder inside full of petrol. The advantage of it being it's very, very light. It weighs almost nothing, so it's a huge fuel capacity, but it adds virtually no extra weight to the aircraft. Just in and of itself, it's a beautiful piece of wooden fabrication too. Look at the structure of that and the plywood layers. It shows just what you can do with plywood.
Kiel, May the 2nd, 1945. The last mission the Mosquito bomber was involved in. It was also the last raid the RAF was involved in at the time of the war. The mission was to drop a 4,000-pound bomb on the target in northern Germany. At the de Havilland Museum in London Colney, They have replicated the setup and the bomb with the photograph that was taken on the day of the raid. One of the most notable missions the Mosquitoes were a part of was in fact Operation Jericho.
Operation Jericho was another famous Mosquito raid in February 1944, and it was a raid on the prison at Amiens, where the German Gestapo were holding a very large number of French resistance prisoners, and there was a great worry that of course these prisoners would be interrogated, tried and executed. So the raid was it was called Operation Jericho because famously in the Bible the walls of Jericho came tumbling down, and that was exactly the intention of the raid itself, was to go in at low level, very low level, with a Mosquito squadron and with fighter cover to protect them, and to go in and basically smash down the walls of the prison so that the prisoners would be able to make their escape. And that's exactly what happened. It was led by a chap called Group Captain Pickard, who was a very famous, very accomplished pilot in the RAF during the war, and he and his navigator were sadly killed during the raid. It was a very high risk raid indeed, because the Mosquito aircraft were flying in very, very low indeed, obviously vulnerable to attack from the ground as well. But the raid was successful, the rules of the prison were breached, and a large number of prisoners made their escape.
Now for the final question. Has the Mosquito's incredible design impacted how modern planes are built? After all, de Havilland also built the first Comet in the 1950s. The de Havilland DH-106 Comet was the world's first commercial jet airliner.
The legacy of the Mosquito was in its construction. This unique form of plywood and balsa wood construction, the composite construction, is still used today in modern jet airliners. Only instead of using plywood and balsa wood, we nowadays use metal. For the plywood we use sheet metal, and for the balsa wood we use a metal honeycomb structure. It's all made of metal, but it's equally strong, and the mechanical principle of it is exactly the same. The Mosquito paved the way for this, and the Mosquito was the first aircraft to adapt this form of construction to mass production techniques that were necessary.
So there you have it. The Mosquito was one of the most versatile planes of the 1940s, and one of the smallest and fastest bombers built during the war. This plane is truly an unsung hero of World War II, and deserved to receive the Engineering Heritage Award for its remarkable design. You can see for yourself at the de Havilland Museum in London, Colney.